Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Del Castillo, and I'll be the host of today's session, Advancing Cloud Data Strategies with Efficiency and Ease in the Public Sector. Today, I'm joined by two of my close colleagues, Sean Pupanich, Senior Solutions Architect at AWS, and Jeff Drews, CTO Consulting Services, Red River. Now, as we get started today, I just want to make a couple quick announcements. One, we'd like to keep this incredibly interactive. So please, on the right side of your screen, there's a questions icon. Feel free to type in questions there. And just to view the screen a little better, in the lower right corner of your screen, there should be a settings icon that you can zoom in a little better so that you can improve the resolution of the screen today. So throughout this session, we'll share with you a number of things. We're going to start with some of the challenges that we're seeing across the public sector space. Then we'll hear from Jeff and Sean in terms of capabilities that are available through Red River and AWS to overcome those challenges. And then finally, I'll provide a demonstration of the Komprise Intelligent Data Management solution so that you can better see how those challenges can absolutely be turned into opportunities with Red River, AWS, and Komprise working together. Right. Jeff, Sean, ready to get started?
All ready.
All right.
Ready.
So in terms of challenges that we're seeing in the public sector space, Jeff, Sean, please chime in as we go here. But what I see is kind of the more common challenge is really organizations looking to shift away from managing their large data centers, the infrastructure that's involved in those data centers, and really try to leverage cloud services. So the key here is really reducing their capital expenditure and normalizing their operational spend so that they have a better understanding of what their year-over-year spend is, as opposed to having to budget for these very large infrastructure purchases every 5 years. Are you also seeing those same challenges?
Yeah. I think the way budgeting goes, especially in public, right, is that it takes a lot of effort to get these expenditures going. And time is really what it comes down to. And so being able to normalize that over a period of time and spread it out just helps. It's also just the time again it takes to get those larger expenditures gets reduced by being able to get smaller expenditures over time, which helps you basically move your timetables up.
Absolutely agree. Now I'm just noticing that there's a comment about my audio. Let me know if my audio continues to sound of an issue, and I can try to switch it here.
One of the surprises we see when you go through this transition is, when you're going through capital expenditures, you're used to, planning years in advance and spending everything up front. And so when you go to this OpEx model, what surprises a lot of customers in moving to this model is you actually have an opportunity to save each year. So for example, before I joined AWS, I completed a large migration to AWS for a company I worked for. But I was also able to save 30% each consecutive year by further optimizing what I was doing on AWS, whether that was using savings incentives like savings plans or reserved instances, or just optimizing what I actually use. So for example, in a capital expenditure, if you have let's say a 5-year hardware refresh cycle, you're having to buy much more than you need at that point in time. Whereas as your needs change in a cloud environment, you can kind of continually adjust that. So if your needs go up, you can move that up. But actually, if you find that you're underutilizing your servers or your storage, you can also scale that down.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. So
especially around the reserved instances, that is a huge savings if you can understand what your workload is. And a lot of times you can make your migration into the cloud, understand operationally what your cloud spend is really going to be, and then make smart choices around reserved instances to lower your long-term cost proactively. without losing the capability to, burst as appropriate for, busy, operations.
Thanks for those additions, guys. So moving forward here, one of the other things I hear about quite often is, shadow IT. And shadow IT has been around for a long time. And for those of you that aren't familiar with shadow IT, it's really just the establishment of an IT function outside of central IT. Often the line of business or mission area feels that it's necessary to create their own IT function to allow their mission area to move faster than central IT is allowing them to move. Obviously central IT is moving at this pace because they have to put governance in place to really understand the technologies that are being deployed, the impact of those technologies, vet those technologies for vulnerabilities, et cetera. So what we're hearing is it's not about establishing data governance, but it's establishing the ability to modernize their data governance program so that they can allow organizations the agility needed, but still try to reduce that shadow IT. So that's another common theme we're seeing across the public sector. And then finally, this is not an uncommon theme as well, just this visibility through a single pane of glass. And essentially what that means is the ability to look across your entire storage infrastructure, your data infrastructure, and make a good decision. So it's very hard for us to make a decision about 50% of our organization if we only have 50% accuracy. So having a complete picture of your entire environment and being able to make a decision from that is truly a requirement. It's been a requirement for a long time, and I think it's going to continue to be a requirement until organizations can truly grasp an understanding of their entire business. Sean, Jeff, anything you would add there?
No, except that, one of the complexities, especially during a migration, but even where you're staying more in a hybrid scenario where you have some on-premises and in the cloud. So within AWS, a tool like Komprise and others, right? They can provide you the visibility of both, what you have from what you haven't migrated, I guess, to what you have migrated and understand, what that looks like. So, that single pane of glass is really important. As just a general note anyway, but even more so when you're in a transitionary period between being on premises to being all cloud.
Absolutely.
And so the way I kind of look at, governance and oversight is that, if you have a solution that involves, 50 different parts from 50 different vendors, it's much more complicated to have consistent process, consistent APIs, company ethos. So what AWS allows you to do is have a consistent experience across a number of different services. So our APIs, our tool sets, the automation you can deploy are all designed to be pieced together and work together. So you can have, for example, very tight governance control over, what can get deployed to production environment, what that network looks like, the different security appliances and controls are in place, but you can still give your developers the freedom to build sandbox solutions and move things into a production environment that follows an automation process or a CI/CD pipeline.
Very cool, Sean. Thanks for adding that. So, with that, Jeff, if you don't mind, can you give us more of a in-depth intro of yourself? Share with us a little bit about what the CTO of consulting services at Red River does, and share with us Red River.
Great. Yeah, Red River, we've been in business about 26 years. We have over $1 billion in, annual transactions thereabout. We're 750 plus and growing employees. We have hubs across the nation. I think we have a person in just about every state in the U.S. So we are a highly distributed organization, but we have hubs in various different states, California, Texas, our corporate headquarters up in New Hampshire and Virginia. And then, we're also a strong believer in giving back. So, when we talk about 2,500 volunteer hours, it's not just that. It's that plus more. And then we operate a NOC across the U.S. as well. We take that very seriously, along with our managed services. For AWS and Red River, we've been on this journey with AWS for quite some time. We've done migrations, 7, 8, 9 years ago into AWS for the Department of General Services and others. And so what we've done over the last several years is we've taken our partnership level with AWS to the next level and beyond. I mean, we're hoping to be, I expect approved for Premier Consulting Partner here in the next couple months. We are an advanced consulting partner now. And we've been developing core competencies with AWS in order to better serve our customers, as well as better aligning with AWS capabilities. For instance, well-architected frameworks, how the delivery program skills are aligned with a GovCloud versus other sorts of environments. And then, of course, just in general, our competencies getting more defined, developed, and having a lot of, if you will, standard processes, working behind those.
Absolutely impressive qualifications. I know it's not easy to achieve these overnight, so it really just speaks to your partnership with AWS. Sean.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with getting our staff also, trained up, if you will, in AWS and the vernacular for cloud. And we did incentive programs. We really pushed our own staff, and so we went from a handful of certifications to dozens and hundreds of certifications to match these competencies.
Yep. Sean, since we're talking about AWS, maybe we can do an intro from you. Tell us a little bit about the role as a senior solution architect, and also if you could share with us what your perspective from what you're hearing regarding data and the types of customers that are coming to you asking about data cloud strategies.
Yeah. So I'm Sean Pupanich. I do want to mention that these competencies are one of the things that I also review, and they are not trivial. I've had a number of partners fail in this endeavor, so it does speak to Red River's qualifications to have this many. I'm a solutions architect for AWS. What that means is I work with partners and customers in the public sector, and sometimes I help people save time and money in what they do every day. And sometimes I help them discover something new that advances their mission. And so AWS serves 7,500 government agencies around the world. Here in the US, we serve the federal, state, and local levels. And if you have compliance requirements like FedRAMP Moderate, you can use that in any of our US regions. If you have advanced requirements like FedRAMP High, we have specialized regions called the GovCloud that can help you meet some of those advanced federal requirements. With over 200 AWS services, you can quickly and securely build and scale core infrastructure like compute and storage, as well as newer technology like machine learning. So recently, I've been working with customers that fall into 3 groups. And so we have a lot of kind of first-time cloud users. These are large organizations, enterprise IT, and they're typically looking to move data off-site to kind of simplify operations and manage costs. So these can be things like backup and archiving, or there are also things like storage tiering from some of their enterprise network storage devices, where they don't want to have to keep buying additional hardware devices on-prem, again, because of that capital expenditure planning. But they still want fast access to their hot data. And so these kinds of customers rely heavily on the software that they use to kind of simplify their decisions and interactions with the cloud. and maintain a familiar user experience. So for the most part, they're interacting through their software partners and less directly with AWS. But once that data is in the cloud, it does open up some opportunities. Another group I worked with, especially last year with COVID hitting, was elastic workloads. So these are where there's a sudden surge in demand in terms of scale, or it's some kind of new application that needs a quick turnaround that only the cloud can deliver. So some examples of this last year were remote learning and remote work solutions. And so these often engage both our consulting partners like Red River and technology like Komprise to be able to execute these projects quickly and deliver immediate value. And so one kind of example of where AWS has provided a direct solution, but then we also support our partners is in teleconferencing. So for example, Amazon has its own telecommunications software called Chime, but we also are a significant part of the infrastructure for Zoom. Zoom operates their own data centers, but when it came to scaling from 10 million meeting users to 300 million meeting users, they used AWS to scale their infrastructure, not only in terms of just the number of servers they were using, but as you can imagine, you couldn't possibly hire fast enough to manage all that infrastructure. So they were able to leverage AWS managed infrastructure and expertise as well. And then the third group is really what we call long-term hybrid customers. So these are customers that are migrating to the cloud. Some of them go all in, which is 90% or more of their workloads, and some of them continue to have a healthy mix of existing on-prem use cases as well as cloud. And so they will move things really back and forth to whatever makes the most sense. So if they have certain scale needs or certain environment needs that best fit the cloud, they use that. If they have kind of existing resources that are already in that CapEx model and paid for, then they'll continue to use that. And then we'll often see them continue to transition more into the cloud as they start to hit, those hardware refresh cycles or the data center lease dates, stuff like that. And these really involve long-term relationships with both consulting and software partners. And that's where we see, you'll get different projects every year, and you'll work with the partners that you trust the most to help you deliver results.
Perfect, Sean. Thanks. From that, I took away a couple of things. I mean, one, it sounds like there's really no perfect time to start your journey, and everyone's path to the cloud is slightly different. And really going about in that journey, the best way to approach it is through reaching out to AWS, talking to solution architects like yourself, but also consulting with those partners like Red River that have done this before. So, Jeff, if you don't mind, can you walk us through your approach to cloud delivery process? It sounds like you guys have a very formalized approach for starting a journey with a customer, regardless of where they're at in the starting point, to getting them to a place that they'd like to go. And first, I have to say, I absolutely love these phases. I'll talk later about how they nicely align to the Komprise approach of know first, move smart, and take control. And it's so nice to see the synergy between your process and our technology. So, Jeff, if you don't mind, take it away.
Yeah. So this process, you've probably seen it before. I mean, it's really the logical, makes sense sort of way of doing any sort of delivery process, especially if you're new to what's going on. And new is both from a customer perspective, new going into the cloud, as well as new from the the migrator, i.e. the Red River, trying to understand what the customer has and then moving it to the cloud. So there's sort of an intersection there that you have to sort of deal with. And that's where this delivery process kicks in. So in all cases, right, we have to start with, because as we don't know what our customers necessarily have, we have to start with an assessment. And really what that comes down to is we're going to interview the customer. We're going to use tools like Komprise. We're going to do different things to help us assess what it is the customer wants to do and what it is that we need to do in order to make that happen. And that'll, entail, looking at the infrastructure, understanding what the performance benchmarks are for that infrastructure, how much storage is there, how the systems themselves are being used and interact with each other. All of that comes into play, and we just need to understand basically where our customer is and where we are in relation to what that customer is. And that's what that assessment is all about. It's just getting that information, understanding it, having it in a good quality fashion, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So we want to make sure that we have exactly what's there to the best of our abilities. We then take that information and we now plan what it is that we're going to do in that migration. That planning phase is going to take into account elements of what the application and business elements are associated with it. So if our customer, for instance, it's a 24/7, 365-day sort of operation and no downtime is allowable, well, our migration plan is going to have to change to allow for that. Data synchronicity, the movement of information and the, how current it is paramount when we're thinking about a 24/7 operation versus one where we have an ability, if you will, to have an outage. Frequently an outage is allowable. It usually makes the easier plan. And so, obviously we'd utilize that if it's available. In all cases though, right, the idea is that we have zero data loss and, our customers can pick up where they basically left off, before and after the migration. And that gets us to the migration, right? We obviously need to load the information out in the cloud. We have to pick the right types of data and storage and processing, cloud services essentially to make that migration occur. And, we basically, again, have that zero data loss and as near to zero downtime as possible. Again, that kind of depends on what the customer's willing to do and the, sensitivity to any, gaps in information. Again, we want zero, but, sometimes that may or may not be possible depending on, what the legacy system was like. Once you're done with that migration, however, you now need to go into care and feeding mode. And that's where the managed process here is. We need to be able to do essentially the managed services. We need to patch the servers. We want to make sure that data is flowing correctly. We want to keep an eye on storage, keep an eye on that backups are occurring correctly, that if there's a disaster recovery element associated with it, that disaster recovery is being maintained, even tested. So all these sorts of things on the managed side need to kick into play. And again, this is where another tool, where a tool like Komprise kicks in, where we can look at the costs and we can look at moving data around from one, a more expensive storage tier to a less expensive storage tier, and then being able to just monitor overall, maintain service level agreements in other areas. So we got a question actually. One of the ways we do it, one is really trying to make sure that the systems themselves are redundant. So in AWS, right, it's actually kind of easy depending on how your application is architected, right? If it supports an elastic load balancing, or if it just supports even a cluster sort of way of doing work, in other words, you have clustered servers. If you can do that, what you do is you split your workloads across availability zones. And then from the 24 seamless perspective, right, you usually are going to do some sort of data synchronization sort of process. If it's a database, you might do transactions where, it might be log shipping or, use a particular tool for that, database. If it's a file system, right, you might use, something as simple as a robocopy or, using more advanced tools for copying that system over. So what we do is we look for tools and complement them with, AWS services such that you can keep that near zero downtime in a 24/7 environment. Frequently patching, if you can do rolling patches across, server infrastructure, that's certainly very important. A key consideration that many people don't, necessarily factor in is that in order to keep it close to a zero downtime, you have to have practiced the process that you're doing to keep yourself there. So if you're doing a rolling patch sort of process, you need an environment other than production to first test out doing that patch process, because I'll guarantee you there's something in there that's slightly different that nobody considered, and you don't want to be doing that the first time in production. So make sure you have that lower environment to do it in first. From a delivery capabilities and superpowers, from Red River's perspective, right? We have the 5 that you see here, and there's quite a bit of blend, if you will, across these. But if I go to the lower right here, networking, Red River sort of grew up in Cisco wireless networking, firewalls, routes and switches. So that's our bread and butter, growing up, and going into the cloud, it was a natural fit for us to have that same sort of capability. Very similar with storage. We understand all the big storage vendors out there, working with Dell and any of the others. So storage is also a very natural fit for us, and cloud actually makes storage really, really easy. And actually with Komprise, it helps you to understand what your storage footprint is, and to keep control of it. Because one of the problems really anywhere is the storage keeps growing, and nobody seems to nobody can keep track of it quickly enough. And so a tool like Komprise can help you do that and keep control of those costs. Red River as a whole, right? We do a lot of public sector work, so state and local, federal, and generally speaking in secure environments, right? So I'm talking FedRAMP moderate, FedRAMP high, the CMMC, those sorts of environments, HIPAA, CGIS. We work with our government customers in those areas, and so they're regulatory complex, if you will, and so there's certainly a lot of experience behind that that we bring to the table if you're government. And then migration. That's certainly an item that we've done a lot over the years. I mentioned GSA, gosh, 8 years ago, I think now, when we migrated them to AWS. That's a large system, right? It's GSA is the largest landowner, I believe, or office space owner in the world. If you can imagine all the different office space that any public employee works within, for the federal government, that's what they manage. And the system that we migrated to AWS basically managed, their management of that. So very complex, several thousand users concurrent all the time. And so our assessed migration planning processes are aligned with that. But it's not just the lift and shift, right? In a migration, the lift and shift is sort of the easy button. It's also the one that gives you the least amount of value when you're going to the cloud. If you don't look at what you have and understand how you can better utilize your cloud services to better impact your return on investment, you're kind of missing the whole point of cloud. There's good reasons even for lift and shift. Don't get me wrong there, but it really does require that you spend some time to understand your workloads and better utilize the capabilities of an AWS. And that really is around, it might be elastic load balancing. It might be, maybe you want to containerize some of your applications. Maybe there are, software as a service capabilities that you should be factoring in, other than, kind of having your traditional brick and mortar in the cloud. So there's just, various different things that you can take a look at that. And Red River brings that to the table. Same thing with DevOps. So if you're in an agile process today, or you're looking to be more agile, you're looking to do more development, faster enhancements, better quality enhancements, DevOps, doing continuous integration, continuous development pipeline, CI/CD sort of processes, those are where it's at. And you need if you need some good help, Red River can help you get through all that. We love automation. So, if we can automate something, that's what we do.
Thanks, Jeff. Absolutely.
And I did just want to add to how the cloud does help support that near zero downtime. So if you look at the cloud economics, right, this pay-as-you-go model, if you're working in your own data center and you have a service that uses, let's say, 100 servers, and you want to roll out a new version onto another 100 servers, then you're basically paying for 200 servers. In the cloud, you can spin up that extra 100 servers and turn off the previous 100 servers And so you're only paying for that short time where you actually have 200 servers online. So really, you don't even see it. You're able to do these entire shifts to new versions or new infrastructure, and using DevOps methodologies and using process automation, it makes big changes like that very simple. And so you can use our load balancers, you can use our blue-green deployment tools that can help just kind of automate all of that, and it becomes a normal course of business. You push a button and everything happens for you.
Yeah, and I think to reemphasize that, the DevOps, the scripting, that sort of automation makes the zero downtime that much easier, because if all your environments are following that infrastructure as code, configuration as code model, you can expect the same results in one environment versus the next environment. So if you're following a strong deployment methodology, the same scripts that run in a test environment should run just exactly the same in your pre-production environment, just as they should run in your production environment. So you can have some peace of mind that if you've got it working correctly in one environment, it's going to work correctly in the other environment. And then also, great point, you can tear up and tear down these environments very quickly, such that you can get lots of cycles in on testing to make sure that you don't run into problems.
Great point, gentlemen. So let's shift gears for a second. We've talked a little bit about, or I should say a lot about Red River and a lot about AWS. You've mentioned Komprise. So let's bring Komprise in for a second, talk a little bit about the intelligent data management solution, and then hop into a demonstration here so everyone can see the value behind why the three of us working together is so powerful. So first, we take a know first, move smart, and take control approach. As you mentioned in your cloud delivery process, Jeff, assess and plan is exactly what we like to do when we're helping organizations know first. We like to analyze the environment, allow them to look across all of their network attached storage, analyze the metadata on that network attached storage, all the files that sit there, and truly provide visibility so that they can make a good decision from that information. From there, they have the opportunity to run in-depth queries, tag, classify that information as needed before they do anything. And then when it's time to actually move data, there's a couple of things we can do. We support asynchronous replication, migration from aging network attached storage to more modern network attached storage. And then really the area in which we work so often together with AWS is the ability to archive transparently. And this process is basically looking across all of the metadata, choosing a appropriate time frame for the organization to say any file that hasn't been accessed in this period of time, I would like to tier that out to AWS, an S3 bucket in AWS, so that I can reduce my spend approximately between 60 and 80%. And essentially what we do is we tier that out, and then we leave behind a shortcut or a symlink or a symbolic link to allow the users to still access those files, but not store those files locally. So they're able to really shift, as we mentioned earlier, from that CapEx infrastructure to that operational spend at that point. And then finally, in the take control, very similar to your manage phase, Jeff, it's really the ability to put control back into the hands of the end users and the organizations that are deploying Komprise. One of the things that we do that's very unique compared to others is we write data in native access, so that, or native format, so they have native access to the data, so that when this data is sitting at AWS, it's not just sitting there as a unintelligent storage tier, it's actually there to provide additional value for that organization. Now, Sean, if you don't mind, can you share with us some of the advanced features that they would be able to leverage at AWS, having this data in its native format?
Yeah, so this is a pretty valuable feature because it opens up that data to all of the other cloud services that we offer. So I'll give you a few examples. So we were talking about governance. And so one of the ways central IT can help maintain governance is with a service called Amazon Macie. And so what this does is you may have other users that you give the freedom to create and use storage however they see fit. But you want to make sure that they're not putting in sensitive PII data or health information or something that isn't within their jurisdiction to place there. And so Amazon Macy can go through an automated discovery process to find that information, and then you can execute additional processes to even help protect that information. Another example of improving usability would be, if you have a lot of these different NAS systems on site, so you have a bunch of different network storage pools, if you can aggregate that into the cloud, then you can add things like Amazon Kendra, which is an enterprise search service, where it will index all of your documents so that you're not just looking for file names or dates. You can also search the contents of those files. Another one I've seen is this kind of extension of existing applications. So, at the state and local level, for example, there are applications that are very long-lived. They may be 10, 20, 30 years old at this point. And there's an infrastructure there that is relatively consistent, but they want to be able to, do more with it, get more insight. So let's take, the DMV or unemployment or any of these kind of citizen services that have had these applications for a long time. Well, you may not want to modify or move those applications, but you may want to be able to take that data, migrate it up to the cloud, and then be able to run new reporting or analytics or dashboarding on it. And so you can dump that data into AWS, and then you can use tools like Amazon QuickSight, or you can even use partner solutions like Tableau or something like that. But with QuickSight, you can have a single user that can go and kind of discover that data, build reports, and then scale that out to users as needed. So you still get to take advantage of that pay-as-you-go model. You're not having to do a lot of big upfront planning. You can almost discover the value of it before you even have to pay for it.
Sean, that's absolutely awesome. We always talk about native access to the native format of the data, and sometimes people just think, well, that's cool, that's important. But now that you've shared with us those advanced capabilities, I think people will truly appreciate more what it means when we say we write that data in its native format to the cloud. So with that, let's go ahead and shift gears right into the demonstration here. I think I have about time for 8 to 10 minute demonstration. So I'll give you just the highlight reel, if you will, and help you see why the Komprise solution is absolutely a solution that can address a lot of the challenges that we've talked about today. So first, we talk about a single pane of glass visibility across the organization. So here you can quickly see that I've established a discovery across my network attached storage, and I have 8 shares here in management. And I'm looking at about 4 petabytes of data that I've managed. So from here, I have immediate visibility across my storage infrastructure. I also can see that I've got 45 million files in management. So this is incredibly useful to make sure that you've included all of your storage, all of your data, so that you can make a decision from, do I move to the cloud? When I do, where do I place that data, et cetera. Additionally, we also provide a number of useful analytics so that you can truly understand the details of that data, things from space consumed by file type. So you can see that we're storing a large amount of video data, space consumed by file size, top owners, et cetera. So again, very deep insight into your information. Now, scrolling back up, I do want to quickly share with you what we have here in our data donut. The data donut here represents all of the data in management and the age of that data. So you can see from the hottest data around the donut here to the coldest data. So you can see approximately everything on the left side right now just so happens to be my colder data, where everything on the right is my hot data. And so far, I'm not showing any cost savings specifically because I've not edited a plan. I will absolutely come back to that, but I do want to share with you how easy it is to establish these shares so that you can quickly build out the visibility that you need for this single pane of glass. So let's jump over to shares real fast. Here you can see all of the shares that have been discovered, and you can see where I've discovered 3 shares, but I've only enabled 1. You can see where I have that information there. As I go back here, we can add additional file servers. Everything here is in a drop-down list. As I select something, you just pop in your API credentials and you're good to go. You also have the ability from the screen to establish your cloud targets. And this is where you would establish a cloud target to AWS S3. And if we actually come in here to advanced, we can actually turn on lifecycle, and this actually allows us to transition the data from S3 to S3 Glacier based on a defined point in time. So I can say 365 days later, I'd like to transition this data if it hasn't been accessed to Glacier. So absolutely valuable there. Now, from there, now that you have a good visibility of all the data that exists, there's a number of things you can do in terms of planning for your migration. Deep analytics allows you to drill down into the data that I briefly showed on the plan tab and really look at that data from a couple different perspectives. So here we can see when we're planning to move to the cloud, I might want to take a look at my cloud planning data and specifically the hot data that I'd like to leave on my premises environment. So here you can see I have ran a query that's showing data that has been accessed after a year ago. So this would be considered cold data. And I'm focusing on file types like spreadsheet, document, image, and presentation. Now, data that I might want to tier to the cloud, I would have in a different query. And this would be something like data that was accessed more than a year ago for that same type of data that hasn't been accessed often. And you also have the ability to come in here, apply tags to this data if you'd like to do additional things. I've got some existing tags here, or I can create a new tag and quickly tag this data to build a virtual data lake or classify it as I'd like. So now that you have an understanding of all of the data that might exist within your organization to provide that enterprise visibility, let's quickly talk about how to save money from this data. So the first thing here is coming in and establishing a plan. I have a plan, continuous maintenance, and in my plan, I have enabled 8 shares that I'd like to look across. And I'd like to look across these shares for data that hasn't been accessed in a year or more, because that would give me an understanding of the potential to save money here. So immediately you'll see that when I drag over my browser icon here, I can see that I have a potential cost savings of $13.86 million over 3 years. From here, I can choose that I'm going to move this to my AWS S3 primary storage. And you know what, I'd also like to create a backup for DR purposes and move this to, a backup region. You don't always have to back up data with AWS, but because I've got very strict regulatory backup requirements, it is something that's required by my organization, so I'm going to do it anyway. Now, from there, you see that I've selected these items. We see our cost savings on the right. You also see this purple shaded area where it shows that we're saving about 50%. And now you truly have an opportunity to assess how aggressive or conservative you want to be in that savings. And that's really down to the cost model. So in our default cost model, we're seeing that organizations tend to spend about $700 per terabyte per year on storage hardware, $350 per terabyte per year on backup hardware, backup software, $200, and they would perform 3 backups. Now, if this is more than you typically do, you can obviously change that to 1. You'll see that the savings with Komprise has shifted to more accurately represent your organization. Hit save. And again, on the right side, the cloud target here is really using industry standard charges cloud storage about 150 per terabyte per year. The cost of Komprise is actually included, and we're also including egress fees. And of course, you can come in here and change these numbers as you'd like. Hit save, and now you're seeing that the numbers have adjusted from 13 to 8.2 million in savings. So there's still a significant amount of savings, and that also includes the cost of Komprise there. So hopefully through that quick demonstration, you're able to see why the solution between Komprise and AWS is such a valuable solution in terms of cost savings. So let me stop here and we'll go back to our presentation and talk about why Komprise with Red River. So hopefully from the demonstration, you saw that there's absolutely a lot of capability. I think one of the key things that Red River needed to look at was really the flexible deployment approach. As Jeff, you mentioned earlier that you deploy across a number of environments. So you really needed a solution that could deploy across those environments with you and also be scalable, because we know that government agencies, public sector agencies vary very greatly in size. From the demonstration, hopefully you can see that we also work across a number of storage vendors and protocols. And really the key to us is we're out of the hot data path. So we want to focus on the metadata and really route you to the file, but stay out of the hot data path. So no, we're not going to put a load on your network or anything like that. And then when you leverage us for migration, we'll maintain full fidelity of that data. So if you move that data over time to different places, as long as it's being moved through the Komprise solution, you'll always have visibility of where things are. And thanks to Sean for the great overview of kind of the benefits of us writing data to AWS in native format. There's a lot of additional capability that the Red River customers can realize with the Komprise solution. And then finally, as I mentioned, again, organizations in Fed and public sector vary in size. So you need a solution that's absolutely scalable and willing to grow with you, and that's absolutely the Komprise solution. So Jeff, you briefly talked about the different clouds you manage. Do you want to talk a little bit more about those clouds here now that we have the screen up?
Yeah, do you want to answer the question really quick?
Let me look at it. Yeah, go ahead and speak to the clouds, and let me look at this and see how I can answer that.
Great. And when we talk about Red River, we predate, if you will, the move to cloud infrastructure. We were there with the virtualization of data centers, right? VMware, the various different technologies around that, storage, networking, both on premises and into colos. So from a Red River perspective, our size and scale and diversity of technologies that we have both grown up with and well as invested in over the period of time make us an ideal partner to help with these sort of complex environments. As Eric was saying, right, you have part of this where you may only go 90% into the cloud, or whatever that percentage may be. You're always leaving a little bit back in your on-premises, or you have to, right? There may be regulatory, legal elements that require you to do these sorts of things. That's where Red River can help ensure and help you maintain those environments, as well as achieve what ROI and outcomes that you might be able to achieve going to the cloud by modernizing your systems, by taking a different focus to how you do the operations of your business. And I don't mean that in terms of necessarily your business processes, but your technology and operational processes for them. So it's really important that you have, if you will, a partner in all this that understands the complexities around that.
Thanks, Jeff. So looking at these questions here, I see that the first question here is, if Komprise migrates the data to AWS EFS or FSX, can the solution provide analytics when it would make sense to move data to AWS 3 for cost benefits? Absolutely. So the same analytics that we can run across your on-prem NAS, we can also run those analytics in the cloud and help you understand when it would make sense, when that data is aging, to move it to S3. The other question here is, can I migrate some data to EFS and some data to S3 using Komprise? If I do that, can I take the S3 data up to EFS at a later date? So yes, you can absolutely migrate that data and move it around as needed. Okay. So just in the interest of time, let's hop into our key takeaways. Hopefully from the demonstration today, everyone is able to see that there's absolutely value in the three partners, if you will. What I'll do is I'll start at the bottom, talking about proven process, scalable infrastructure, and an analytics-driven technology really will provide the opportunity to shift those challenges that we talked about in the beginning to truly opportunities. And this is why the Red River, AWS, and Komprise story works so well together. Now, as you're going on this journey, always make sure to plan and right size as you go. There really isn't, as I mentioned earlier, the right way to, or the right time to go to the cloud. There's obviously the right way, and that's with a consulting partner, but there isn't a right time. It's really up to you as an organization. And that's where you obviously reach out to, your consulting partners like Red River, your technology partners like Komprise and AWS. And as you're developing that journey, make sure that you look at it from a couple perspectives. Don't always just have a single path, but have a vision for where you'd like to go and lay out small increments for how you're going to get there so that you can adjust as you go. So what we call that is think big, start small. Make sure that you obviously know where you're going, but don't be afraid to go down one path and quickly adjust, because that's often what has to happen within these large organizations. Sean, Jeff, anything you would add there?
Not a lot, but with AWS, right, the whole incremental side of this, and this gets back around to our one of our first points around CapEx and OpEx, right? With an OpEx model, you can tend to do smaller increments, which is where have a good goal, something that moves the needle for your business or whatever process it is you're looking to do, and then take incremental steps towards it. In the agile world, one of the elements there is that if you're going to fail fast, and then kind of correct it and move forward with it. So that's kind of where these incremental sort of elements kick in. You can fail, and that's okay. Learn from it, correct it, and then redeploy it. And we're talking about a matter of days and hours, weeks, as opposed to months and years that your more traditional processes might follow. And of course, planning is just you can never, well, you can overplan at times, right? But you can never know enough about what it is that you're doing. But make sure that you have built in your ability to try again, and then hopefully you get it right more often than not. But make sure you always learn from that feedback.
Absolutely, appreciate that addition. So with that, I'd like to wrap here and share some next steps. Obviously, reach out to us. We're available to have conversations. You can learn more at redriver.com/capabilities/cloud. You can contact Red River at info@redriver.com. And you can even sign up for a free trial of Komprise at komprise.com free trial. So absolutely reach out to us. Through us, we can bring in AWS as a partner and really help you understand where there's cost savings opportunities and opportunities to shift from challenges to opportunities. So with that, any final words, Jeff and Sean, before we end our session today?
Yeah, I do just want to make customers aware that, when you're working with our partners, AWS does have programs internally that, if you qualify, can help offset the cost of some of these migrations. So one of the challenges we do see with customers is they're paying a fixed amount for whatever they do today, and then there's a cost to migrate to the cloud, and then some sort of realized savings over time. And so AWS does have programs that can potentially help offset that migration cost and make that transition easier for you.
Really appreciate that addition, Sean. It looks like there's one more question here. Oh, not a question, just a thanks for the presentation. You're welcome. We really hope everyone learned from our session today. And again, feel free to reach out to us with any questions. Thank you. And this concludes our session for today.